Okay, so good morning, everyone. Well, good morning if you're in approximately the UK time zone. Welcome to this session on hidden costs of cheating and anti-cheating. I'm the host, and we have four interesting speakers with us today. We have Wolfgang Grünstäudl from the University of Wuppertal, who's going to be speaking about cheating in online chess. David Smerdon from Queensland, who has some specific research data on cheating that he'd like to share with us. Alexander Matros from the University of South Carolina, who's done some research into anti-cheating methods. And rounding out our speakers, we have Alex Holowczak from the English Chess Federation, who's going to speak primarily about the role of arbiters and organisers in the opposition to cheating. Now, we do have quite a few speakers to get through, so I'm hoping that each of them will keep to roughly 10 minutes, and that will give us some time for questions and answers at the end. If you do have questions, then I'd recommend that you post your question into the chat so that we can ask the speakers to address them at an appropriate time. Okay, so to introduce myself, I'm Vince Negri from Game Ahead Consulting. I have an interest in cheating technology and the interface between technology and humanity. So I'm attending most of the anti-cheating sessions and chairing a couple of them. I'd be very interested to see what our speakers have to say. So with that, I'd like to hand the microphone over to Wolfgang to begin, and he can speak about his research in cheating and online chess. Thank you, Wolfgang.
Okay, thank you so much, Vince, for the introduction. Could you enable the screen sharing for me, please?
There you are. You should be able to.
Yeah, here we go. Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to take part in this conference here. First of all, I would like to emphasize that I'm not speaking as a scholar on the topic here, because you introduced me with my university background. I'm just speaking as a club player, and I'm starting from my personal experience with the topic. And so my emphasis is more on the practical stance of the topic, and yeah, of some aspects that I think should be more in focus or should be more discussed in the future. Having said that, my talk has three parts. In the first part, I would like to set out what I understand about talking about cheating as a social experience. The second part is more focused on an example from the German background, speaking about the DSOL here. And the third part will try to formulate some impulses for the future. How could teams, or how should online playing teams, chess clubs deal with the issues here? So first of all, speaking about online cheating as a social experience means that's not a typical way we talk about cheating in most contexts. Normally, we think about cheating as a one-man show, as a single player playing online who has troubles or meets cheaters or alleged cheaters and so on. Things are a bit different if one switches to, for example, the 4NZL or to the German DSOL, it's the German counterpart, when the teams are starting to play online. Then we have different levels of team experience, so I would call it concerning with cheating. The first one would be that we meet as a team another team which is in some sort or in some aspect suspicious. For example, one of the other team members has a closed account on another platform or something like that. Next level would be a team experience that means that one of our teammates is accused of cheating, for example, by the platform or by another team. Let's think about, we have some cases in the 4NZL, for example, or we have such cases with the well-known case of the Armenian Eagles. And it's quite natural that the team supports a team member when it is accused of cheating. And that's quite a different aspect of the the social discussing round of cheating. It's not a one-man show. It has effect at a group. And the third and the most serious level is when there are doubts of honesty regarding one player of my own team. So now it's not an external trouble, an external thing. The cheaters are no longer the others, but there is at least a suspicion about cheating within our group. So I think it's important to see that if we are playing as a group, as a team in an online event, the whole issue of cheating is in some sorts reframed. It gets a different stance, it gets different aspects. And I think it's necessary to speak about this aspect, to think it over and to discuss it, especially within the team. My example that I would like to focus today, and I'm very happy to see Matthias Willenleber around in the group here, is the German Online League. This is something similar to the 4NCL Online League. Where the first edition started in June 2020 and the second edition is coming soon. Like in the 4NCL Online League, we have teams of 4 players. We are playing 45 minutes each and with 40-second increments. And in the first edition, we had about 240 teams competing in this event, which is hosted, organized by ChessBase on the one side and by the German Chess Federation on the other side. Like in the 4NCL Online League, there's no camera control of the players. So cheating control relies on a typical means of algorithms of checking the games afterwards. And there's also a human aspect in checking there. Quite a difference compared to the 4NCL Online League. In the German chess community, we did not have that broad discussion of cheating aspects as there was in the British context. We have Alex Holowczak here with his wonderful publication in UN Chess, which was, I think, very helpful to clarify the backgrounds of the whole issue for NCL. In the British context, there are a lot of discussions in the ECF forum. And compared to that, the discussion in Germany was relatively small. At the end of the league, when all the games were finished, we had, of course, some sort of a final report by ChessBase, but also by the German Chess Federation. And I think this final report of the ChessBase was quite exciting. I really was thrilled by reading it. And it has several aspects that are crucial for this thinking about social aspects of cheating. First of all, the final report said, there is no way to check the games in a reliable and solid way after playing them. Those are caught which overdue. So the platform stated that they are not able to identify cheating in a reliable and solid way after playing the games, so without control by cameras or something like that. And they emphasize that there's a huge difference if games are played with a longer time control. So they would emphasize that it's able to check cheating as long as we're talking about blitz games. But as soon as people are playing longer games with less tactical blunders, then the system has its limits. A second point from this final report said, tournaments like DSOL are an offer to the chess players. If they are not able to handle it properly, such offers won't exist very long. So here we have the platform focusing on the responsibility of chess players themselves. And it's maybe a starting point for some shared efforts on the topic between the players and the platform. And the last point, therefore chess players need to temper their ambitions and to pay attention especially to the fair play of their teammates. Or in other words, watch your body. That's the message in here. So we have a new aspect or a new try to call in action the responsibility of the teams taking part in such an event. So it's not only about the organizers, it's not only about the responsibility of a hosting platform, but there is some responsibility on behalf of the players too. Having said that, what are the consequences for chess clubs, for teams taking part in such events? I would like to formulate 4 of them just quickly, and I would like to formulate them as questions. The first is chess teams should be clear what is their own take on the topic. Do we think that cheating is something that affects us as a group or as a team? Or is this something which is only a topic for the individual player? Or to formulate in other words, if the single player is not punished by a platform, should we think about suspicions about cheating, or should we ignore it until to the final stance when someone is banned? Second point, where do we get reliable information? I think that we have a huge lack of information on the topic, and if I will try to start as a club player to search for information, to search for bibliography on the topic, I really won't get that far. And for this reason, I'm really excited to hear what David is saying about his research and about generating new data on the topic. Fourth point, with whom do we ally? Where are other people or other clubs that think in a similar way on the topic? How can we join our forces to do a step further and to clarify our aspects, our strategies against cheating in the midst of us? Yeah, and the fourth point, what is our contribution to cheating prevention? It's not about technical support. A normal chess club or normal chess team won't be able to write new script or to come up with a new idea how to prevent cheating on a technical level. But chess clubs and chess teams are crucial in prevent cheating from an educational aspect. So how do we educate our players, especially the youth, especially our kids, how to behave properly in an online environment and especially in an online chess competition. So this it is, and I thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang. So it's a very interesting start. And I'd like to now turn to David Smerdon, who's been doing a pilot study to gather some specific research data into chess cheating online. David, would you like to begin, please?
Yep, thanks. I'll just get my screen up and running. Hopefully this works. Has that worked okay, or?
Yes, I think we can see that. Yeah, you've got PowerPoint up by itself. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I'm a bit confused with PowerPoint on screen sharing sometimes because there's also the presenter view as well, but I guess you're seeing just the slides, right?
You were seeing the slides and the thumbnails down the side, but I think we can see them clearly, so we'll...
Oh, okay. What if I do that? Is that better?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay. Thanks, Wolfgang, for your talk, by the way. That was super interesting. I'm really interested in the social norms aspect of many things, but particularly chess cheating. And so this idea of shared responsibility as well, and sort of also the buddy system type idea, I find that fascinating. Maybe we can explore it more in the questions. I don't want to set your expectations too high for this particular talk, though, because I was sort of trying to work out what I should talk about. As a behavioral economist, I thought one of the best things might be to try to present some of the literature on cheating and dishonesty behavior in general. But then I realized that actually maybe the most interesting thing is to show some results of a little survey that I did. I was a bit hesitant at first because it's not super rigorous in the sense that this data won't go into an academic publication. But because I found it interesting, I think you might find it interesting. So let's do that instead. A little bit of background, just a bit of framing of how I view chess cheating. I see online chess in general, but particularly online chess, as a public good. It's a service that provides us all with utility, even though sometimes we feel worse after a game than we did before we started playing the game. But overall, there's net benefit to be had from online chess, I think. So you think about it like a public good, which is such as the provision of public transport, the provision of a clean environment, things like this. And a common problem, which we're probably all aware of, is free riding. The idea that some people can take advantage of these sort of provisions and exploit them to the disadvantage of the others who are sort of doing the right thing. So examples would be people who don't pay for tickets when they go onto public transport, or people who throw rubbish away and litter at a beach or something like this. And we can see, like, cross-culturally, there are quite a lot of differences in how these norms might act. In some countries, people would never even dream of throwing a soda can onto a beach. In others, it's become sort of the default, and the same with public transport and so forth. So a lot of researchers have become interested in social norms and how they might be able to help, or also the role they might play in propagating a free riding sort of behavior. And how effective social norms can be in breaking down bad behaviors or trying to promote positive behaviors depends very much on the beliefs that people have about how many others are following that sort of behavior. And in situations where you've got taboo sort of topics, where it's not that easy to talk about your true feelings on it, it can be very difficult to get accurate beliefs. And so something like cheating is something where it is really a taboo to talk about it, particularly if you are a cheater, for example, or you have ever cheated. So that's a little bit of the background, just because I'm very interested in social norms in general. But let's get straight into the data, given the time that I've got. As Wolfgang mentioned, there's really not much information out there about chess cheating, particularly when it comes to data collection. From what I know about the platforms, particularly the big guys, they do a lot of work on this. They've got dedicated teams, but understandably, they're reasonably guarded about what sort of public information they give. And also, they target a very specific sort of cheating. And those are the cheaters who consistently and persistently use engines in their games. But one might think then about cheaters in terms of, say, bank robbers. The vast majority of the population has never robbed a bank, and then you've got some who make it their sort of profession, so to speak. But there might be this intermediate sort of ground where people move into the gray area, test the waters, and then maybe they keep going with cheating, maybe they pull back. And I'm kind of more interested in that sort of side of things. And I think it complements the work that the big platforms are doing. So that's what I wanted to do. I did it just for my own benefit, but now I get to share it with you. It was a quick and dirty survey to just get a broad picture of 3 questions. What fraction of people have ever tried cheating? What are some of the reasons why they tried? And particularly for my research, what's the role of beliefs about cheating, in particular, how many others cheat in the group? And are these beliefs accurate? So what I did is I ran this online a few months ago. I recruited people through Reddit, which you may know is one of the world's biggest internet forums, through Facebook, through Twitter. And I really wanted to make it as comfortable as possible for people to go on there and give their true feelings and their true confessions. And I wanted to get a big enough sample to be able to say something reasonably solid. So I made it very short and I made it anonymous. Most people finished it in under 2 minutes. And I was quite surprised by the responses. I got almost 800 responses from it, from across 70 countries. Now, it wasn't strict academic survey sampling, but I'll show you some of the descriptive statistics to give you an idea that it's not that far away from what you might find at a representative club. 96% male, the age distribution looks roughly normal, the rating distribution looks roughly normal as well. Straight into the questions then. Have you ever cheated in an over-the-board rated game? Only 18 said that they had, that's 2.3%. That's not too many, I would say. You might say that, well, it would be terrible if 2.3% of my tournament players are cheaters. But remember, this is just, have you ever tried it? So I don't think it's a particularly large number. Then I asked them, have you ever cheated in an online chess game? Now, before the big reveal, try to set your own prior belief before I bias you here. Have you ever cheated in an online chess game? What sort of percentage would you think? Well, I don't have enough time to do a drum roll. So the answers are 21.6%. Now, that's more than 1 in 5. And remember, this is a survey where some people may not feel super comfortable about answering as well. And these are also people who are willing to go on and do a survey that they knew was about chess cheating. Some cheaters may not even click on the link. So if anything, I would guess that this is an underestimate, but still, because it's anonymous and quick, I'd feel that it's not too far away from the truth. Of those, it won't surprise you to know the vast majority used engine assistance. The second biggest category was using opening books and databases, and there were quite a few people who selected both of those options, so engines as well as databases. Interestingly, those who said that they only use opening books and databases, when I asked them their reason for why they cheated, they almost always said it was for training purposes, to try out a new line or something like that, as opposed to the ones who used engines, which probably doesn't surprise you too much. So then, who cheats? Let's go into some patterns about the sort of people who said that they have ever cheated online. Well, you can see that the age group distribution looks slightly different to the normal distribution from the survey. In particular, you've got oversampling from the 18 to 24-year-old bin, where almost 1/3 have said that they've ever cheated, and it sort of tapers off as you get older. What about by rating? Well, across most of the bins, it's almost exactly the same between that 20 to 22% range. There's one more bin right on the end. That's the 2400 plus bin. And then we get a little bit of a spike. Now, I did that for dramatic effect, but now here come the caveats. This is the smallest bin in terms of size. It's only got 57 participants. I'll also mention that it's not statistically significantly different from the rest of the group. We're also talking about online ratings here, so these are not FIDE rated people. And the last thing to mention is that rather than drawing any conclusions that titled players are more likely to cheat, we've got a big reverse causality issue here, and that is if you are a cheater, it's far more likely your rating should end up in that 2400 group. So I wouldn't really draw anything from this, but it's still a pretty graph to put up there. I also don't want to draw too many conclusions from the gender split. I'll put up the stats, 22% to 4% if you just look at percentages, and I can run a few tests on those, both parametric and the more conservative non-parametric, and find that we find a significant gender difference. But I really don't place too much stock in this. My light knowledge about econometrics tells me that we should be worried with such a small female sample here, and the fact that if only one of the females who said that they'd never cheated was lying and had actually cheated, so that number 1 moves to 2, we immediately lose statistical significance, means that I wouldn't place too much stock in this. But still, it seems like something that is worth exploring further if you're interested in gender differences, which I am. So it might be something for further research. Then we get to the thing I'm most interested in, which is about beliefs. So I asked people, what percentage of players do you think use or have ever used engine assistance on the site where you usually play? And we get a really nice wisdom of the crowds type effect here, which is that we get a huge distribution of answers from 0% all the way up to 100%. But you take the mean, and just like has been shown in psychological research, it's pretty much bang on to the actual true frequency. So remember, 85% of those who said they'd cheated said that they'd used engines. So that means that 18.4% of my sample use engine assistance, and the mean belief of people was 19%, remarkably accurate. But like I said, the distribution is quite crazy. And also what I'm most interested in is how these beliefs differ by those who choose to try cheating and those who have never cheated. Now, if social norms and beliefs don't play any role in your decision about whether or not to cheat, we should find those two groups to have almost the same mean belief, roughly speaking. But we don't find this. Of those who've said that they've ever cheated, they're far more likely to overestimate the number of others that are using engines on the server. Whereas those who have never cheated before, it's the opposite. It's only slightly below the true percentage, but it's still a little bit below. And this is, as you can imagine, given the sample size, a highly significant statistical difference between the two. Now, still, this is only correlational, it's not causal, but it does suggest that maybe there is a role for beliefs and social norms in at least people's decision to try cheating, not necessarily to continue. Okay, I'll go into the reasons quickly so people could give text answers here. This would also extend the length of time they spent on the survey, so a lot of people didn't type in at this point in the free text. I have codified the answers that I've got there, but I won't go through them in detail here. Just to say that the main reasons why people cheat can go into a couple of different categories, and none of them will surprise you. The first is self-interest. I wanted to win or gain rating points. The second is training. Those people were far more likely to have used opening books or databases. The third is revenge. Either they'd been playing online against the same opponent and were getting sick of losing, or the opponent had abused them in the chat or something like this. And the fourth goes to that belief and norms type approach, which is suspicion that others, particularly in like an online tournament, a chess.com or Lichess tournament, belief that others were cheating and therefore I needed to cheat to keep up with them. There were quite a lot of comments about cheating just once or twice, particularly when they were younger, particularly when they were under 18. People told a lot of stories about how they ended up first cheating at some point, which is very interesting reading, but obviously I won't go through it here. And then quite often they would talk about, I've never done it again. I was so ashamed. I actually quit online chess for a period of time afterwards, which is really interesting to me and also quite reassuring. It says that even though I've got this massive difference, 20% of people versus the 1% that you'll find in chess.com and Lichess's cheating reports, it tells me we're talking about very different things here. So I don't think anyone should be worried that those numbers are very different. We're talking here about people who've tried once, and they may not have tried in the whole game, even just for a couple of moves. And what's reassuring here is that for the vast majority, I think all but one who gave answers here, they said that they stopped. It may have taken them a little while to stop, but eventually they stopped. This is a nice one. I vowed to never do it again. However, I did it twice more. There was only one player who spoke about what we might call in psychology moral creep, which is that they tried cheating once or twice, checking the engine, and eventually it snowballed until it was an addiction, doing it all the time. For the vast majority of cheaters, that's not happening. And this idea of talking about shame and what others might think really links into this social aspect that Wolfgang mentioned and is also sort of the focus of my research. So quick summary then of the insights. A sizable minority, about 1 in 5, have tried cheating, but very few continue, particularly also if we assume that the platform's detection systems are accurate and the reports that they give. There's not a clear pattern in my survey data for who cheats. There is some evidence that younger males might do it more often, but we might want to focus on this for future data gathering. Also, as Wolfgang highlighted, it seems that beliefs about the perceived frequency of cheaters predicts whether or not a person has ever cheated. But here also we need to tap into behavioral economics where there is a potential reverse causality issue, because recent research has suggested that people might form beliefs ex post after the fact to rationalize their actions. Now, for economists, this is a revolutionary idea. For psychologists, they've known about this for many decades, of course, but still we're sort of coming together with our two fields on this sort of stuff. Caveats: self-selection into the survey and experimenter demand because it's a taboo topic. But again, I mentioned that it's an anonymous survey, 1 to 2 minutes, and at least the descriptive stats don't look too crazy. In the future, I'd be very interested in using indirect elicitation methods, also possibly using incentives, which I've tried in a few of my research topics on other taboo issues, to try and get a more accurate reflection about whether or not people cheat, and also to compare those results to the self-reported results to see whether or not we can rely on surveys. Because if we can, let's just go with surveys. If we can't, it's important to know. And most importantly, I think there's no measure of the cheating frequency. Here I just ask, have you ever cheated? I think what we really want to know is when we sit down to play someone online, what's the chances that that person is using an engine? I think that's the things that also the platforms are most interested in, and I can't do that in my survey. That's where I'd like to go in the future, looking at how often people cheat, how often do they believe that others cheat in a single game. Of course, we all want to know what makes them start and what makes them stop. And very specifically, how do social norms matter here? And particularly, how might misperceived beliefs causally affect the propensity to cheat? Okay, time's up. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you've got any questions later, and feel free to write into me about anything offline as well.
Okay, thank you very much, David. In order to make sure that we make most of our time, I'll move swiftly along to Alexander Matros, who is going to speak to us about some research into anti-cheating methods. So if you'd like to.
Okay. So can you see my screen? Okay, so thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for this first 2 interesting talks, and it's actually going to be more easy for me to proceed because especially of the last David's talk, because it's going to be very, very related. So my talk is going to be based on my paper with Aaron Bieland, who is a PhD student also at the University of South Carolina. And I, of course, will not have enough time to share all details and examples. So if you would be interested, so you can go to the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization, where our paper was just accepted, and you can see more examples about what I'm going to talk about. So what are we going to do in this paper, and what is the connection with this session? So typically, and I would say this is like kind of common wisdom, that chess is very good for children, for education, and the reason is very simple. So so if you just do a little bit of chess, you can be just much better in maybe math and other skills, and this is like a very common approach why you should do, let's say, chess at school. In this paper, we would like to show that there is like another aspect which we can use from chess, and which can be applied for teaching, for schools, for education. And this is in particular, especially in the current situation, we can use chess experience, how we can evaluate students online. And chess can help us to design maybe test exams, and this might be just like very, very nice experience which can be used in education in general. So now in the time when we have this like COVID-19, we all know that most of teaching had to switch online in spring 2020, and it's still online. And there are several main problems with education right now. So for example, if you run a test or exam, then you have problem that it's very difficult to proctor students, and you have this problem of cheating. So from this point of view, there are a lot of connections with what just David talked about. So in chess, it's exactly the same problem. So you just don't know what you are facing, whether you play against agent or you play against like real person. So nobody, most of the time, proctoring, and you're afraid of cheating. So here there are a lot of similarities. So in education, so we can try to use more than 20 years of experience from chess. So when again, like for example, ICC started this like platform, and already like more than 20 years ago, it was a lot of discussion about cheating. And hopefully this experience at chess can be used much broadly in education, and this can help us to design kind of like more fair and more appropriate exams for just like all other like applications for educations. So I want to mention two papers which are related to our study. The first one is kind of like in line with what David mentioned. So the first paper is it's a survey, and as you can see, this was done 10 years ago. And here authors ask students whether they ever cheated, and they tried to answer a very simple question, whether, let's say, what would be the difference in cheating if you take face-to-face exam or in-class exam, or if you take online exam. And in this very first paper, this in 2010, authors found that in this survey, students reported about the same level of cheating, either it's online or face-to-face. And this was a little bit surprising. And they said, okay, so this is just like, this is all fine. And this is how it's supposed to be. So, and just please remember, this was like 10 years ago. And again, like in surveys, so you can just report whatever you want. And already here you can feel this is like a 5-time difference with what David found. And I think this is kind of like very revealing, because again, like you can report whatever you want, and we cannot observe your actions. We can only see like what you decide just to tell us. And the second paper, this like 2014, so here authors, they really tried to look at actions, not at what people would tell you, but they wanted to see what people really do. And in 2014, so once they look at what people actually did, so they found actually big difference between online tests and what if you do tests face-to-face. And they found, of course, that cheating was much higher in online experience. And now I just want to give you kind of like an idea why this is the case and why you should not be surprised to see so much cheating, for example, when you play chess online, and why you should not be surprised to see a lot of cheating when you take, let's say, exams right now, when it's all in online environment. So just here, I would like to put just 2 slides about theory, and I understand that for most people, maybe this is kind of like this shocking experience because maybe they've never seen anything like this before, but I just want to make this like as simple as possible. So here, I would like to give you kind of like a simple model for what's happening if you take exam online. When you take exam like face-to-face, or this will be the same if you play chess over the board. And just please remember, this is kind of like a very simple model where you can get like a glimpse, you can get an idea for what's happening. So here we have an environment where we have a student who decides whether to cheat or to be honest on the test. You can think also about this as a chess game when you play like in real situation over the board, and you decide to be honest, or you decide to try to cheat. So like in David's example, so this would be just like 2% of the respondents would say, okay, so just like we tried at some point. And then the professor here can observe what's happened. And I typically in let's say university environment or at school, so of course if you see the student cheated, so then you would like to report this student and you would like to punish the student. Or if you see that it was like no cheating, then of course you're just not interested to punish the student, and you're very happy to give like full credit for the performance. And here you can see numbers at the very bottom. So here high number means this is just the outcome the professor or student liked the most, and the first number corresponds to the payoff for the student, second number corresponds to the payoff for the professor. And here you can see that 4 is the highest number, so this is like the number I would like to achieve. So for the professor, the highest like payoff of the highest outcome, so this is like the outcome he would like to receive, would be if student is honest and professor would not report the student. So this is basically like the best case scenario, so everybody is happy about that. And here we can see that in this case, student would get payoff of 3 and professor will get payoff of 4. So this is the highest payoff for the professor. And for student, this is like the second highest. So for the student, the best outcome would be if the student would cheat and professor would not report the guy. So this is like, in a sense, what David mentioned, let's say, like for cheating. So let's say if a chess player would use an engine, and then nobody would just like punish the guy, so you feel kind of okay, so I just like the best player, so I'm just like achieve like the best possible result, I'm very happy, so this is my payoff of 4. So in this situation, so again, like if we just don't go for like more details, we have unique equilibrium, so this is what theory would predict, and in this equilibrium we actually gonna achieve an outcome when student would be honest and professor would not report the student. So this is second best outcome for the student and the best outcome for the professor. So this is kind of like the model which illustrates why in face-to-face exams we reach what we get, and we don't have a lot of cheating, at least in theory. Of course you have some cases, but this is just like what is supposed to happen, and why if you play like chess games over the board, you don't see a lot of cheating. So you have some, but this is kind of like more as an exception. Now, what's gonna happen if you look at situation when we play this like simultaneous move game? So this is a situation when you have online chess or you have online exams. Here, if you have no proctoring, then the professor doesn't know what the student did, and student can decide again between cheating and to be like honest. And now notice what's going to happen here. So if we think about the outcome which I presented just before, so suppose student is always honest and professor never checks, so we get exactly the same outcome, like 3-4, so 3 for the student and 4 for the professor. But now if student believes that professor would never report the student, then of course it's no point to be honest, because if student now cheats, then payoff for the student would go up from 3 to 4, and student will manage to reach the highest possible outcome for the student. So in this case, if student believes that professor would never report the student, so student would always cheat. Now, if professor always believes that student would always cheat, then professor would like to report the student all the time. And now if professor report the student all the time, then student of course would like to be honest all the time as well. So, and we get this circle. which essentially means that in this environment, we have what is called like mixed equilibrium, which again, like if we apply for our situation, means simply that we must have cheating in the exam. So this is part of the equilibrium strategy. So you should expect cheating. And this is exactly what's happening in online chess. And this is exactly what, for example, David reported just in previous presentation. And this is the idea that if you have over the board chess play, or you have exams in the class, you're supposed to have much less cheating than if you have these activities online. And this is just like very simple theory where you can see what's going on. And of course, in the paper, we have examples and illustrations what's happened like in the real class environment. But I wanted to get you like theoretical idea for what's happening here. And what can we do about that? So we can have two ways how to deal with this situation. So one solution would be to implement, when you play this like online chess, to make this as sequential move game. So essentially to make this like very similar to in-class exams. So here you would need to use camera. And in this example, you can see like how you just, you can use camera where you can see like what is the environment, what is just like on the screen. Of course, you can never eliminate all the cheating, but at least in this way, so you can just make this situation as close as possible to over the board play, or like this is like exam in the classroom. But very often students would complain that, okay, so camera can be very bad for my privacy. I don't want to have camera in my situation. Here we have second solution in this case. And now, since we're gonna talk about simultaneous move games, so this like no camera, so you cannot see what's happening. And one solution which can be done on this situation, so just like decision of the instructor must be final. So this is like the only way. So because this is just like you see all these scandals in chess, and there is like never enough evidence, because this was just like situation when we don't know what players did, we don't know what students did. And in this situation, if instructor believes that it was some cheating, so based on instructor's previous experience, then decision of the instructor must be final. And on this graph, you can see this like spike in ban of chess players on chess.com, and you can see it's kind of like spiked during this like COVID-19. Of course, like more players, but also problem just like was like much higher. So for the second solution, of course, it's possible to apply this solution on the private platforms, because again, like this is your website. You can decide, okay, so I would like to ban some players, and nobody can stop you from that. However, of course, in institutional environment, it's much more difficult, and that's why it's very difficult to say that, okay, so professor can actually fail the student without any evidence. And this second solution is very difficult to implement. Essentially, it was no success so far, which means that we have to go back for solution number one. And for solution number one, now students can complain that, okay, so cameras just like violate our privacies, and this is not a good situation. So we kind of like in like stalemate, but I still feel that chess can give us a lot of insight for what's happening. And just to summarize, so we have this more than 20 years of experience of chess cheating on chess, which can be used especially now for educational reasons. So how we can just think about how to design exams online. And right now we see this like two options how to deal with like tests and exams online. So one is like you use camera, and you try to approach this as close as possible to face-to-face exams. If not, then instructors should have this possibility to have this kind of like final votes. Okay, so just like if they believe it was cheating based on their previous experience, so this decision must be final, and they don't need to provide like evidence for people, because otherwise this would actually encourage future like cheaters, because then these people would know about like different tools which instructors used. And this is the policy which is used by different websites. For example, by chess.com, they try not to reveal so why somebody was like banned from playing chess after like chess.com decided that it was cheating on the part of this player. Okay, so I think I will stop here, because again, like as always, we're running out of time. So thank you very much again. And if it would be like any questions, just please let me know again, like either by email or just contacting me. And the paper should be available on the journal website very soon. So thank you very much, Vince. Yeah.
Thank you, Alexander. And yeah, mindful of the time again, I'll hand straight over to Alex Holowczak, who will talk about his experience as an arbiter and organizer with trying to battle cheating. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for pressing that. I was trying to do it on my keyboard. Firstly, just to say I'm pleased to be able to attend this course this year. I'm usually the chief arbiter of the London Chess Classic, and as a result, this conference nearly always clashes with it. So my only interaction with it normally is when delegates arrive in the playing area on their phone and I have to kick them out. So I'm glad to have a very pleasant experience of this so far. And I'm looking forward to being here over the weekend to see some more of the talks that are being given. So these are the online events that I've been involved with since March this year. You can see that they're predominantly team events, but also some individual events. And I've been quite heavily involved in England with doing a lot of these tournaments over the last 6 months. I've already heard reference to the 4NCL. That's probably been the most burdensome on my time. It's by far the largest in terms of the things that I've been doing. I'll just skip on. So I've broken this down a bit into different responsibilities. I'm going to comment on organisers first. Organisers usually produce the rules and regulations for the event. And normally when you're creating an entry form for an over-the-board tournament, you just create it. If you've organised things before, you have some template that you can use and either adapt or simply copy and paste, and it just works. So there's never really too much thought into it. You might occasionally tweak a word here or there, but for online, that's completely different. We've had to take legal advice for our entry forms about how fair play situations should be handled, which means we've had to find a lawyer. That's a cost in some cases. We've been lucky to have some pro bono legal advice here in England, so we've been able to sort that out in that way. But we've also had to get each individual player to sign up to a disclaimer that they've read the fair play policy and understood it. Usually, if you are playing in a team sport in England, I'll use an example like football. When you join your football club, you have to fill in a membership form and you have to sign up to all of these things. You know, signing up to things like, I realised that my photo might be used for publicity. I realised that we might have some cameras streaming the game, all of that sort of thing. But with an online chess tournament, we don't have a physical environment, so we can't rely on the teams to do that. So we have to get the individual players to sign up one by one that they've read all of these things. You saw from the size of the events that we had something like 220 teams of 4. So you can imagine that's 880 people we've got to track before we've even started, plus another 600 or 700 for the junior event, plus all of the reserves, the players that join late. So it's been a pretty ongoing task where we've had to track something like 1900 emails. Then you get parents who fill it in rather than children, and we don't know. So, okay, we have this email from somebody not registered. Who is it? And then it turns out that it was for their child, and we didn't know that. So all of this takes up a significantly amount more time than the corresponding over-the-board events do. For fair play, we have to check in advance that Professor Regan's going to be able to check our results. Now, specifically, the problem with that is that he's a bit of a single point of failure. If ever he's out of the loop for a week, maybe he goes on holiday, we've got a problem. Because at the moment, within FIDE, he's the only person who can scan these results and give us some feedback. And so if he's going to be away when you're holding your event, well, you're in trouble because you've got nothing that you can use to make a decision. So you have to make sure he's around before you commit to some dates. If you've got a platform like Lichess or chess.com, you need to have a pretty good working relationship with them because they might ban a player for whatever reason, and you might want to know why they banned them. And sometimes the platform will say, well, it's none of your business. Others probably won't tell you exactly what they've done, but they'll give you a lead as to what has caused the ban. You'll normally have a pretty good idea from Professor Regan's results yourself. But you need to know these things and you need to make sure that people are around. If you don't have a direct contact with the platform, it can be quite difficult to get very quick answers. After the tournament, the biggest problem that I've experienced is, when do you announce the results? And a good example of this, actually, in our ongoing 4NCL competition, one of John Foley's teams has done very well this season, and he was very keen to know who his team was going to play in the semi-finals. And we said, well, we don't know yet because we have to do the fair play checks. So he had to wait over a week for those to be completed. We've had the ongoing online Olympiad for disabled players, where we had to leave a 24-hour period for that to happen. And I do remember the online Olympiad as well, when there was a break between the divisions. There was a gap of maybe 3 or 4 days, and teams were very keen to know which group they were in, who they were playing, and what time they'd be playing in. And we couldn't tell them because we had to wait for the results. And we know from surveys of captains at the end, they marked the arbiters actually down on efficiency. And when we probed why, it was because they felt it took us too long to publish the pairings for the next stage, which was for what I consider to be a reasonable reason in terms of checking the fair play. But we can see that players don't enjoy that just as much as the arbiters and organisers don't. We've also had to work with a video conferencing system. If you're running an event with Cubans in it, good luck using Zoom, it's banned there. So you have to make all sorts of different provisions for them. None of us knew anything about Zoom 6 months ago, so it's all been a learning curve for a lot of us. And we have to put in place all sorts of communication systems with WhatsApp, Slack, other things like this. Communication, not just with teams and players, but also with other arbiters and staff, because we're used over the board, if there's an issue, that we can just go and find the player. He'll be, he's sat over there, easy. But if there's a problem in a game of chess online, how do you communicate with the player? If you send them a message via the lead chess messaging system, they might have just ignored that. They might have turned it off because there might be a child, as a child safeguarding measure. So if there are problems, it's very difficult to communicate. And these are, it takes a considerably longer amount of time to do that than it would do over the board. And there's also the uncertainty of entry fees, because all of this work needs staff to run it, and staff probably won't do it for nothing. So you need to make a judgment on how much people are willing to pay to play in a structured online event. If they're just going to play some 3+0 blitz event, they don't need us as tournament organisers. They can just go and do that themselves without us being involved particularly. But if they want a more structured event, you need to work out how much they're willing to pay. Will they pay as much as you will pay for an over-the-board event? And a lot of organisers have been very nervous about this because they're very unsure. And again, this is a time-consuming matter, because there's quite a lot of discussion about, if we charge £20, will no one play? We don't know. So there's been a lot of I guess, guesswork in terms of how these things work. And because a lot of the entries are left to the last minute, because there's no need to book a hotel or book a train ticket, you may have your event you think are very well organised, and then suddenly the number of entries double in the last 3 days before the event. We've run some online events in England where we were very happy with what we were doing. We had all our staff organised, and then suddenly we had another 60 entries. It's like, well, suddenly we need to go and find some staff. So this is all different from what we'd find over the board. For arbiters, we have had to learn a lot about how all of the various different systems work. That's the chess platforms, that's things like Zoom and Skype. We've also had to learn what happens if people want to use a tablet or a phone to play these games if we're monitoring them on Zoom. For example, there's a bug in Chromebooks where you can't share multiple screens with Chromebooks, all of which we've had to learn sort of as we've gone along. We've had no prior warning or knowledge of this. And it, again, saps time, because you write these regulations for your next tournament that you can't use a Chromebook, and then you get 10 emails saying, well, why can't I use my Chromebook? Why can't I use my tablet? So there's quite a lot of explaining to do to players as for things that we think are perfectly reasonable and we've learned that players haven't quite yet grasped, because it's all so new to them. One of the really time-consuming things that we have for our league, and I don't know if it's shared by the experience of the Bundesliga, is that we have to get the games out of the website and get them sent off to Ken. This means that we've got 440 games every week. We need to go and find them on lead chess one by one and paste them into a PGN file. And then you have to make sure it's the right game. You have to maybe scroll through 10 King of the Hill games to find the 45+15 game, which you can imagine just how long that takes. And then we have had to learn how to interpret Professor Regan's data. I don't think many arbiters are very good at that yet. FIDE arbiters seminars in the past have traditionally focused on, okay, send the games off to Professor Regan and wait for him to hear back, wait for him to process it and you'll hear back. It's almost been an afterthought in terms of actually looking at what his output provides and explaining what arbiters should be looking for. I think a lot of us have had to learn a lot more about that over the last few months that we perhaps, I think if we're looking back and reflecting honestly, we sort of didn't really pay any attention to 12 months ago. We have to provide a lot more in advance training for players. For the online Olympiad, I thought we ran a training day. We basically ran a fake round the day before the start, just because we thought things were so likely to go wrong that it would be worthwhile. Over the board, can you imagine an Olympiad where we asked everybody to get there one day early so that we could make sure everything worked properly? It just wouldn't happen. Online, pleasingly, I think this practice has become pretty embedded now within lots of online tournaments, but it's nevertheless an additional time constraint that previously wasn't budgeted for. Tonight, I've got something where we're doing our third test of 5 for an event on Wednesday. So there's a lot of extra testing being done that wouldn't normally be done for an over-the-board event. We're also finding that some players are uncomfortable appearing on camera. We have problems as well in England with child safeguarding. So for junior events, we can't record the calls even if we want to, because we're not really able to sort of record children at length. I mean, if you want to get in trouble in England, go stand outside a school and take a photograph. You're not going to, it'll take 10 to 15 seconds for the police to arrive almost. So yeah, we really can't do that sort of thing here. And nevertheless, we think a lot of adults are also uncomfortable just being on camera in the first place whilst they're playing. I think a lot of that might be cultural, but nevertheless, that's something that we're having to explain to people as to why it's necessary, and it is quite a big drain on time. The main difference, though, is undoubtedly that usually over the board, you send Professor Regan the games and he says it's fine. Online, it's completely the opposite. And you have to spend lots of time interpreting the detail, and you have to spend a lot of time then actioning that detail and making decisions and liaising with the platforms. We also get lots of emails from witch hunters. Pleasingly, at least, it's private. They're not going publicly and accusing people. But I get maybe 10 emails a week that could be summarized as, I don't want to accuse this player of cheating, but all of which we just sort of say we don't reply to these emails, but they're not things we want to be receiving. Others, the other thing that we have as a problem is that there are people who actually are quite good at working out what's going on. So they'll report people who we know are dodgy, but we can't take action. And they'll go into quite a lot of detail. And they sort of flood us with emails every week that we have to deal with. For team events, we find that we have 2 captains. There are captains that are supportive, and if a player's been banned, they tend to accept it because they realise all of the things that are going on. On the other hand, we have disruptive captains who send some argumentative, even aggressive emails. We have people who openly question the data and the methodology, which is their right and is absolutely fine, except that they've signed up to a competition that's going to be using these things. And a lot of them sort of don't necessarily understand the methodology in the first place. So there's a lot of time spent explaining perhaps some particularly trivial concepts that we've already had to explain a dozen times already to different captains, perhaps. And we've had cases where teams withdraw from the tournament in protest. And the problem with that is that you then have to deal with the knock-on consequences for the competition. When we communicate with captains, we tend to get a lot of negative reactions, which is understandable. You're just telling them that one of their players has cheated. The problem with the whole sort of communication process in a team event is that because we're not saying to the player directly, look, this is what's happened, so you're not allowed to play, and because we have to go via a captain, I think, as was reported from the Bundesliga experience, we find that they tend to rally around their player a bit more. And so we tend to get quite a few more things to do resulting from communications as a result of that.
Very sorry, Alex, but I'm afraid we are now out of time. And our best efforts. I know this topic is quite fascinating, and unfortunately, this account needs to be freed up for the next meeting. So I'm.
Fair enough.
It's a shame, and I'm sure that we could go on about this topic for quite a bit longer. But I'm sure that
So what am I doing now?
the discussion elsewhere in the chess cafe. Okay, so we'll need to end the meeting now.
Okay.
Thanks to everyone who's attended, and I think it's been very informative and valuable.